Hello Stagecraft students. Today we're going to look at what is possibly the most common tool that we use in the shop, and that is the drill motor and its close relative, the impact driver. These tools are used for drilling holes, driving screws, tightening or loosening nuts on bolts, and things like that, something we do quite a bit. In our shop, we have the two types, the drill motor and the impact driver, and then we have a couple of different battery sizes as well. So we have the 12-volt battery and a 20-volt battery. You can see they're a good bit different in size. The 12-volt battery is not quite as strong as the 20-volt, but the 12-volt is a lot lighter and so easier to use, especially in overhead cases. The 20-volt battery just provides a lot more power and torque, which is the ability to tighten or loosen things, and will last longer between needing to be replaced. Okay, before we get started using the tool, we need to make sure we have the right safety equipment for using the drills, and that includes the following. First, an approved set of protective eyewear is required. The glasses you've been issued for class are fine. If you've decided to go get your own, I'll need to look at them and check them out and make sure that they are correct safety type glasses to be used. Anytime we're using any tool that has a power button or go trigger of some type, we need to have our safety glasses on. You also may need some kind of hearing protection, maybe the disposable type. You've all been issued these ear covers, which will work fine. Anytime the noise in the shop is loud enough that you need to raise your voice, you'll need some kind of hearing protection. And then lastly, recommended are some type of safety gloves. You've been given some gloves in class, and usually you'll want to wear those when operating any of the power tools, the drill especially. It gives your hands some protection from the spinning parts and things like that. Also, you need to make sure you're dressed appropriately, as we've discussed in class, which means sturdy and protective clothing, nothing super loose, no jewelry hanging down, and especially if you're lucky enough to have hair, you need to make sure that's pulled back and out of the way so it doesn't fall into your face, or more dangerously perhaps get caught in the tool, the drill in this case, while it's spinning. It might pull your hair out or pull the tool into you. So before we get started, make sure you have all that stuff ready. Make sure your area is clean and you are aware of your surroundings and things you might bump into or might bump into you. All right, next we're going to look at how the drills work. Okay, now what we're going to do is look at how the basic drill motor works and some of its features that you might find useful. Probably the most important thing is understanding how to get the battery pack into it. This is the battery pack. You want to make sure we have the right size first of all. So this guy says 20 volt on the side here, and then here on the side of the drill it also says 20 volt. If you're using a 12 volt, it should also say it on the side. This one is worn off, but a good way to tell is to look at the bottom receiver for the battery. The 12 volt is much smaller than the 20 volt. In this case, we're going to use one of the 20 volts in our drill. It just slides in like that, and then you can give it a little push until it clicks, and you're ready to go. If you need to take it out, you have a little yellow button in the front which you push down, and then it slides right out. Should be pretty easy to do. Anytime you have troubles with that, just check in with me and I'll take a look at it. Okay, so once it's powered up, the first thing is we have a trigger right here that we can pull. That makes it turn. These drills are variable speed, which means the more I pull the trigger, faster it'll go up until it gets to its top speed. We can also regulate the top speed. Here on the top there's a little slider. It has a 1 and a 2. probably can hear from that sound, the 2 is a higher top speed than the 1. So usually I would recommend, if you're going to be drilling holes, you could probably use the 2. And if you're going to be putting screws in, you might use the 1 just to slow it down a little bit. The other feature we have is right here, kind of hidden on the handle. There's a button we can push to make it turn either in forward or reverse. It might be hard to see in the video, but there is an arrow on the actual button you push. Whichever way the arrow is pointing, if it's pointing towards the front of the drill, this way, that means it's turning in a way to either drill into something or push a screw in. And if it's pointing towards the back of the drill, then it's turning to remove a screw or it's turning in a counterclockwise direction. Okay, so that's the basic features of how the drill works. This particular drill has a torque meter in the top, in the front here, which can be twisted. This limits the amount of twisting power on the front end of the drill. This is not something you would use very often, normally only because somebody else has changed it and you want it back at its most powerful. But what it does is, there we go. So as it's turning, I can hold this front part. You can hear the sound where the motor's going, but this piece isn't turning. This is meant to keep you from, maybe you're putting a screw into something that's pretty thin or soft and you don't want to go all the way through it. You can set a resistance level to where the front will no longer turn. Normally, when you get it, you'll want the drill to be set on the little drill symbol. That means it'll just turn as hard as it can. That's the most common way that we use it. Okay, so that's the basic features of the drill motor. And next we're going to look at the impact driver. Okay, next up is going to be the impact driver. First thing might be to show you how to know whether you have a drill or an impact driver, and the easiest way is to just look at the front end there. The standard drill has a much longer front end. It's got a chuck that you hold on to open and tighten, which we'll talk about later. The impact driver just has this little tiny mechanism in the front to hold things. So that's the easiest way to tell. The impact driver itself uses either a 12 or 20 volt drill battery. It comes in and out just like the drill motor did, and it also has a variable speed depending on how much you pull the trigger, and it has a forward and reverse. But that's the only thing that you can adjust on this drill. Also, we'll look at this in the next section, but this drill doesn't have the infinite sort of opening and closing device to hold any size. It takes a very particular type of piece to go in here that'll fit, which we will look at next. So that's the impact driver. The reason it's called an impact driver, and we'll hear this when we practice using it a little bit, it has a little mechanism in there which is going to tap at the drill as it's spinning, which helps make it a little bit easier to drive in screws especially. So we use this mostly for putting screws into things, and it's really helpful if we're using longer screws. Okay, next up we're going to look at the various things you can put in both of these drills. Okay, first we're going to look at the things we can put into our trusty old drill motor here. First off, we'll go ahead and put a battery in, ready to go. One of the nice things about these drills is they do tend to stand up on their own, especially the 20 volts. So the way we take things in and out of this drill is to hold on to this front part right here, this part that's colored black. That's called the chuck. In this case, it's a keyless chuck. Some older models, they used to have a thing with a gear on it that you would turn to tighten and loosen stuff, but nowadays usually we see this keyless chuck. We're going to put it in reverse, and we can see, if you look closely, you can see this these three prongs receding into the body of the drill. That opens up this section here so that we can sorry, I just realized this light is shining at you. Hopefully it's not blinding the camera. You can, this opens up so that we can fit whatever we want to use in here. The thing that you'll probably use these drills for the most is for driving screws. In this case, we have a magnetic screw tip holder. This little end will come out. Not that one very nicely, but here we go. The end will come out or go in, and then when it's in here, there's a magnet here which will help hold a screw in place if you can't have your hand on there. This particular version also has a little sleeve that'll slide forward to cover some of the screw. Some people like this and they think it will make the screw less likely to come off. I usually don't use that, but it is there on this one if you like it. So it's magnetic. It will hold the screw, and then you can remove it, because what can happen, and you can see on this one maybe, over time it gets worn out, and so this way we can just replace this little tiny tip here instead of trying to replace a whole long holder. So the first thing we have is this screw tip holder. What we're going to do is place the end inside of the chuck, just make sure it's wide enough, and then we kind of have to hold the object, and then I usually use like my pinky finger to hold the part of the chuck that's trying to turn, just until it just grabs it enough that it'll stay, and then you can use your hand to hold this in place. Now you want to be careful doing that, and this is one of those times when it's a good idea to have your gloves on before you do this, because what you're going to do is hold this chuck with your hand, and then with the motor in forward, keep this in place while it tightens up. And if you don't have your gloves on, this thing could spin inside your hand here, and it might give you a burn. So wearing your gloves when you tighten or loosen something that's going in the drill is usually a good idea. So there it is, it's in there and it's tight. If I turn it, tip is turning, we're operational and ready to go. If I want to remove it, I put the drill in reverse, hold the chuck again here, and just carefully loosen it. Now, one thing you want to watch out for is you don't want to just go full blast on the speed of this when you're trying to tighten or loosen, because it's going to spin so fast that you may not have a good enough grip, and you're just going to burn yourself or wear out your glove a little bit rather than actually loosen it. So just start out slow and then speed it up until it loosens up. Okay? All right, other things that can go in here are drill bits. So from something like this and smaller to something like this. This is about as large of this type of drill bit that can go in, because this drill can only open up about that wide. If it's all the way open, it can fit that drill bit in there. Now you can drill larger holes. If you find something that looks like this, you'll note that the actual back end of the drill has sort of stepped down to the size that fits in here, so that even though the drill bit is larger than what normally would fit in here, because of the step down, we can still drill that hole. The other way you can do it is by using one of these types of drills, which are called a paddle bit or a spade bit, sometimes a speed bit. They're just constructed differently, and they just have this end here which is widened out to the diameter of the hole they're going to make, where the back end is quite narrow, and these just fit right in there. And now you can drill a hole however big this end is. So that does give you some options there. Other things you can use in here, this is a device that's meant to hold a socket. So this just fits on here, and then again you put this in here, tighten it up or loosen it, and you're good to go. So just about anything that can fit inside of here and needs to spin, you can use this drill for. Very versatile tool, that's why we use it so much, and really handy. Now there are corded versions of these types of drills that will plug into the wall, but these battery powered ones are so common now that it's rare to see the type that plug into the wall. These are just a lot more convenient, and nowadays the batteries are so powerful that they can do just about anything that the plug-in ones can as well. All right, next we're going to look at the impact driver. Okay, here we go. We're going to look at the impact driver and the things that it can do. It can do a lot of the things that the regular drill can do. It can do some things better, and it has some limitations as well. So the most important thing is the difference in this front end here. Instead of having the chuck that spins that we can loosen or tighten by holding it, it just has this little slider here that can pull forward a little bit and come back. That's it. Okay. So this drill can only hold things that have an end that looks like this hexagonal end like this. Okay. So in other words, these rounded drill bits and things like this, they're not going to fit in there. It won't grab it, it won't hold it. But anything that has the hexagonal end on it will. So in this case, our screw tips, most of these paddle bits usually have some version of that hex end on it, so they'll go in there. The little piece I showed you that can hold a socket also has that end on there. And then I forgot to show this with the normal drill, but we have a countersink which is designed to put a divot at the outside of the piece of wood to help the screw head sink in. So if it has one of these little hex ends on it, it will fit in there. Most of the time we like to use these impact drivers for driving screws. So the way this works, to put it in, you just push it in there till you kind of hear it click, and then it's in, it won't come out. To get it out, you take this little piece right here and you pull it forward. And when you pull that forward, the piece comes out. So it's really quick and easy. You don't have to have like a strong hand to make something tight. It's just going to be as tight as you need it naturally by the way it's designed. So that way it's a little bit easier to use than the regular drills. The issue is you have to have this kind of end in here. Now the other nice thing about these kinds of drills is that they are designed, this might get loud, let's see how this sounds. So once we get down near the end, you'll hear that loud clacking sound. That's the drill tapping at the whatever you have in here that's spinning to help push it forward a little bit. So it makes it a little bit easier to sink screws, and again, especially if we're doing the longer screws. So that's the impact driver. It can do most of the things the regular drill can do. It just has this slightly different end. The end is actually a little bit easier to use than the chuck on the other guy. And you'll probably use this whenever you can, just because it's a little bit easier to use. Okay, I think that's the main features for this as well. Hope this was informative and interesting, and I'll see you in the shop where we'll get to practice with these guys. See you soon.